Starting soon on Giants of Jazz Radio is the Six Count Podcasts, hosted by Zara Wilde. They'll feature interviews with musicians, academics and authors talking about their love of jazz. As Zara explained, she wanted to collect stories from the people who share her passion and as a means of acknowledging the history of the music.
In May of this year, and I was in a conversation about jazz music. I am the house jazz dancer for an Albany-based speakeasy in upstate New York, and I've been part of the swing community as well, dancing indie hop, and I've always loved jazz music, and so it seemed like a confluence of passions for me. I also went to school at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, where I studied multimedia journalism, and so podcast also seemed like a natural extension of so storytelling plus the jazz and the music and wanting to learn more about this rich history that we have back at home, and as well as all the connections that the musicians we have can tell about where they've been and where they've traveled and come from.
Tell us a bit about Albany. Is that rich in jazz, and there's basically you feel that there's mileage in exploring the kind of the players there and some of the older members of the community?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember one of the first interviews I had was with Skip Parsons. He's with Riverboat Jazz Band, and he was sharing about how he used to play with Doc Sheedham. And so many of these musicians, if they're not from New York City, we, of course, are just about 2.5 hours away. And so we draw a lot of musicians from the city, as well as people's collective experiences going there and choosing between different places in upstate New York to perform. So that was one of the relieving surprises of coming here, because I wasn't sure when I started. I was used to dancing around town, and I knew we had some great bands there, and that was a good starting base. But since I started this project and hearing all of the stories, it's been really neat to see the generations of musicians who have grown up with their grandfathers or grandmothers also playing jazz in the area, and how they've left this really rich legacy and the stories that they carried on. And so I've learned so much about beyond state New York, but about jazz history in general. So that's been really fulfilling, and I hope that I can also share that with listeners.
In many ways, jazz isn't the most popular music around, but it's got, as you say, a long legacy and a history, and that needs to be preserved.
Absolutely. Every time I speak with someone about, well, what kinds of guidance besides going to gigs and listening to it, and all of the responses have been, yes, immerse yourself in the music, to listen to the old records, but also try to support the younger musicians who are here today, because just like narrative storytelling and oral histories, it's the only way that these things seem to continue. And so I've especially felt the urge of needing to speak with anyone who has been around the scene for a very long time, because life is uncertain, and I want to be another opportunity to pay some kind of contribution in carrying that history forward, because so much of what we learned from the past helps inform how we're thinking about today and provides just a wonderful context, and this constellation of stories are really meaningful, and it would be such a shame to lose more than we have to.
You mentioned you're based at a speakeasy, just so listeners understand a bit more about that. What is that? Is that what we would call a club or a pub or something, a public house or something like that?
It is, yes. I forget about how speakeasies perhaps are more traditional from the States, but back when we had prohibition where it was illegal to sell or drink alcohol, speakeasies were a place where one could still enjoy oneself. And it also was a hub for progressive thinkers. Anyone who might have been considered sort of outcasts of society were welcome there. And so a lot of the liberal-minded people would congregate there for a good time and also for sharing ideas. And so now, of course, that's quite different, but say speakeasy now, they might still have a very nondescript door and hopefully really good live jazz music and intimate setting where you can have a good conversation. The speakeasy that I dance at on Saturdays, solo jazz performances, they don't allow cell phones, or they ask that you don't bring it out. And because of that, I feel like it's so much more of a less distracted environment. And I know that when I'm performing, it's for the people who are there, and it's only for that moment in time. I think I am a bit of a purist. I'm not sure to a fault, but I, of course, love the Giants of Jazz. That's one of the reasons why I absolutely love your radio station. But I find myself dancing most frequently to Duke Ellington songs, his older ones, Creole Love Song and Black and Tan Fantasy and Egyptian Fantasy. But I also love Johnny Hodges, and I love listening to Count Basie and all of those, all of the originators, I suppose.
So listeners are going to be able to hear your podcasts. We'll broadcast those twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays at 4:30. You mentioned that the interview with Skip, but I mean, you've got some others planned in the future or working on others now? Is it something you're doing all the time?
Yes, I am. I've been working over the summer on this, so I've wanted to make sure that I had this season sort of slated out. But I publish every other week for this season, with a bit of a break towards Christmas time, and then launch into spring. And I'm hoping to also not just talk with musicians, because of course that was the natural group of people to start out with, but I have a few authors that I want to speak with. One of them is William Kennedy. I'm hoping to chat with. He now lives in Albany, but he has quite a lot of connections to Ireland, and he interviewed Armstrong and talked with other jazz musicians as a jazz fan, so has written a lot of literature. And so I want to bring some more authors, different connections. Another professor that I have met does crime novels. She's going to put the next one of the protagonists, as a CIA agent undercover as a jazz musician in speakeasies during different wars. So I'm excited to see jazz through different lenses and perspectives throughout time, and not just from musicians themselves, but those who also in a journalistic or literary fashion.
Well, we'll look forward to all the ones that you're planning in the future, and thank you very much for agreeing to let us broadcast them on Giants of Jazz Radio as well.
No, thank you so much. It feels almost surreal, because both myself and my father are both avid listeners, or we have it playing at work, and we've shared with other people he's in Georgia, and I'm in New York, and I love sharing it whenever someone comes into my office to hear it playing. So it really does feel like such a treat, and I'm so excited to also learn more from Giants of Jazz Radio, and hope to share the stories of our wonderful jazz culture and society across the globe.
That's Zara Wilde. You can hear our 6 Count podcast on Giants of Jazz Radio on Wednesdays and Sundays from 4:30 p.m. UK time.